Hello and welcome to another edition of 10 Minutes with Dr. Ty Santa. This series was created to gather sage advice from people who've done it, to cut this trajectory, and learning from others who have figured out those things that work. Today, we are focusing on data. Actually, this month, we're focusing on data. And I have with me Miss Algerlynn Gill, who's one of our amazing advisors for My Works Collaborative. And I'm so happy to have Algerlynn. Just with her, she's helped us in pulling together our metrics and asking some better questions and being able to put together some processes. And so I would like to really explore with her so she can share with you, as you all may be writing grants or thinking about better processes in your classroom, how are you and why are you doing data? And so, Algerlynn, I would like for you to introduce yourself and just tell us more about what you do.
Thank you, Tessa, and it's good to be with you today. My name is Algerlynn Gill. I am a Senior Director of Monitoring and Evaluation at a small independent U.S. Government agency called the Millennium Challenge Corporation. We provide time-limited grants to developing countries and have a couple particular things that set our model apart. One is that we have a singular mission, which is focused on reducing poverty through economic growth. And another thing that really sets us apart is a focus on results. And so we have a monitoring evaluation division of about 30 staff that's critical to that focus on results. As a senior director, I'm one of three women in a management team for that monitoring and evaluation division. And in my role, I supervise 10 people. I also lead the monitoring side of our practice, and I contribute to the strategy that guides sort of how monitoring and evaluation supports our mission to reduce poverty through economic growth.
Fantastic. Something that you said to me really stuck out, and it was focus on results. Can you please walk me through, I think that's where we start, isn't it? How do we design and think through our data collection? How does this focus on results really set the framework for that to actually happen?
So great question, right? So we do really start with that focus on results and identifying what it is that we are trying to achieve. And in the case of education, it could be something like imparting skills that would help people, find jobs, or it could be a smaller, more specific problem, like maybe, really high absenteeism or something that you're trying to resolve. But whatever it is that you're trying to work on, you want to document sort of what is the situation right now and what would success look like. And once you have that clear notion of kind of where you're starting and where you're going, you want to think about what are those interventions or what are those programs or things you can do that would help you achieve that goal. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of a theory of change, but you basically want to map that out, right? So what are these things you have in mind that you're going to do? And what are the steps that will get you from those things that you're going to do? So are you going to train teachers? Are you putting systems in place? What are these things that you can do? And what are the kind of attitudes, knowledge, behaviors that would have to change to get you from those things you're going to do to those things you want to achieve? And that's just mapping out that cause and effect relationship between those. And once you have that clear, you want to map metrics to each of those steps in your theory of change, so that you're tracking what you're doing and whether you're on track to achieve what you ultimately, are working towards. And the last step is to collect data on those metrics, do some analysis, and really think about what the data is telling you. Are you on track? Are there things, in which case, great, maybe you just proceed as is. If things aren't going as well, do you need to tweak something to get things back on track? Or is it the kind of situation where you realize you're just totally off base and you need to just start over, right? So that's kind of how we think about that soup to nuts approach of, set up your results framework up front about what it is that you want to do, even before you ever start spending money or implementing your program.
Absolutely. And so this is super high level and it's basic. Like I think about this when you're setting up your, your New Year's resolutions, and as far as like, what do you want that year to accomplish and how are you going to get there, to something is more, something bigger as far as a corporation or changes you might see in a school or company. So let's bring this back to education. So give me an example of like something that you've been a part of in real life that has taken you through this process.
Sure. Okay. So one of the country programs that I worked on that is very near and dear to my heart was a program in Namibia where we actually had an education project and multiple different activities within that project. And one of the activities focused on vocational training. And so thinking back to that first, step or whatever that I laid out of being clear about what it is that you want to achieve, in Namibia, there was a skills shortage, right? And so that led to high unemployment.
Okay.
So our theory was if we provide people with more relevant skills, then they would be better positioned to get jobs, earn money, have a better, standard of life and all of these things. So that was we targeted that, increase employment, increase incomes. In terms of the theory of change, what we did was offer scholarships to young people going so that they could attend vocational training, with the idea that if you enroll in vocational training and you complete your program, you'll gain useful skills. Oh, one thing to add, these are high demand skills, right? So we were trying to find programs that weren't just kind of churning things out that they knew how to do, but were actually providing skills that were in demand by employers. Okay, because that's a key part of the equation, is that to get a job, you have to offer something that employers want. And so the idea was, again, we were offering scholarships so that people could get these high demand skills. They would, achieve competencies, graduate their programs, find jobs, and again, earn incomes. So we developed indicators for all of those things, and we collected data. And this was a really cool program because we were able to do an impact evaluation at my agency. We do independent evaluation. So we hire firms to come in and help us lay out a whole design for how they'll evaluate it. They collect data, they do the analysis, and then they tell us what it is that we've achieved. And the importance of that is that the independence helps us to be really accountable and transparent, right? The fact that we have a third party saying whether we have actually achieved our goals can give the public more confidence that we're using taxpayer dollars in the way that we said we would, as opposed to us just saying, tooting our own horn, we did it, we achieved success, right? Anyway, in this case, we had an independent evaluator that did what we call an impact evaluation. And what that allowed us to do was randomize who got the scholarships. And at the end of the day, we were able to say what we achieved was a direct result of our program. That design allowed us to do that. And what we learned, and this is why I went back to sort of reiterate that piece about the importance of providing high demand skills. We actually didn't achieve as much success as we wanted of, people getting employed and having higher incomes compared to the people who didn't receive scholarships. And one of the key things that we think was behind that is that we hadn't quite got that model right of how to map the skills that were in high demand from employers. Okay. Yeah. And so it's not that we should abandon vocational training, but this is a case where we probably want to tweak our model a bit in how we go about diagnosing or understanding what it is employers need so that we can better supply that. Yeah. So that's kind of applying that big picture to a specific case.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and I like how you talked about it's not, we have to tweak it. It's not just throw the baby out with the bathwater, but where can we be more, how can we get tighter around those skills? Do they need truck drivers versus do they need culinary arts people?
Perfect. Yeah.
We have to figure out where we want to put this emphasis and which programs we're going to support versus which ones, you might like the paint, but we don't need painters right now. So let's be clear about how we're using we need the stuff. We need to figure out what the stuff is that we need. So I think that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I think about like these 3 tips. What 3 tips can you think about that you really want to make sure that if you're a classroom teacher and you're trying to take good data as it relates to attendance or homework completion or even reading comprehension versus someone who may be a grant writer, what are some 3 high-level tips that no matter what you're doing and how you're using data, what do you need to think about as you're setting up these processes to make sure that you're collecting what you want to collect and that you're putting together the process?
So I think in terms of like the specifics of making sure you're collecting what you want to collect, you can kind of think back to what I laid out before, really mapping out that theory of change, coming up with the metrics that are going to, as directly and accurately as possible, measure those steps in the theory of change. But if we zoom out a bit and I think about like 3 more high level tips that I would provide, the first one is to remember your goals, right? Like people can get very intimidated by the idea of monitoring and evaluation. They sometimes treat us like auditors. They might think that we're coming in to, identify failure. Nobody wants to be told that they didn't succeed, right? But the important thing is to remember why we do the things that we're doing. And in education, it's about, helping kids to have a good life, whatever it is that they choose to do. And so, if folks can be clear about, remembering their goals, and not being afraid of finding out that maybe you do have to tweak, maybe your program does need some improvements, that it's actually a sign of success to be open to that learning and that tweaking, than to keep doing things that actually are a waste of resources or that might have a harmful impact on kids. So that's the first one. Remember your goals. The second one is data is your friend, right? So monitoring and evaluation can be intimidating. Data can also be intimidating, right? Numbers. So a lot of people are like, I don't do numbers. Okay, that's fine. If you don't do numbers, find somebody on your team who can. Okay. So whether you're a teacher and you find some, another teacher or your coach or whoever can support you in that process. Not all of us, we have teams so that not everybody has to be an expert in every single thing. Okay. So data is your friend. Find somebody who can help if that's not your thing. And then the last one is that you don't need a fancy monitoring evaluation system or an independent, complex independent study just to get a sense of, are you on track? So I have the luxury of working at, government agency where we have a really robust monitoring and evaluation budget. And so we can hire contractors. We can carve out for every single program, we're carving out M&E funds. And so for, big school districts, I would imagine that they have big data systems. They probably have experts on their teams who do this. They might be able to hire those consultants. For those smaller, single charter schools or organizations like MindWorks that don't have those kind of big M&E budgets, you still can go through the process of thinking through what it is that you're trying to achieve and what data you can collect to assess, are you on track or do you need to make those tweaks that we talked about to make sure that you are having the positive impact that you want to achieve?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So remembering your goals, number one, absolutely. Yes. Relying on your team, collecting data. There has to be a process, and then measuring your success and your progress. And so those are awesome. And they literally can be applied to your giant organization, corporation, to your individual classroom and everybody in between. So if we can remember those 3 things, I definitely know that we're going to be better data, thinking about our data and better being able to create processes for high quality data wherever our situation may keep us. So thank you so much, Algerlynn. I always love talking to you. We need to spend more time. And so I look forward to having you back. And thank you all so much for tuning in for an edition. Keep up this month. Again, we're focusing on data and we'll get more into some specifics. And if you have some questions, please reach out to MindWorks Collaborative and we will definitely spend some time talking with you and figuring out what our needs are and possibly making an episode to address it. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tatiana. Bye.